Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Red Cup Conversations. Today we're here in the beautiful Bixby Knolls area of Long Beach at the historic John Lee Hooker House. Your hosts are John and
Aaron Blackburn. And today, well, let's tell everybody how we got here again.
Yeah.
During COVID, we were bored, eating and drinking.
Eating and drinking, getting the sugars, getting fat. My clothes got too small.
So I decided, they closed all the bars in Bixby Knolls, so I decided to build one. So we brought the bar home, and we were sitting here one day, and we started talking about all the kind of stuff that's going on in Long Beach. And me and John said, let's start filming people and interviewing people. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. One part was bored, but anyway, today we have Rex Richardson, a friend of mine. He is vice mayor and also the 9th District Councilperson. He's here. He's going to tell you guys a little bit about himself. So, Rex.
All right.
Well, who are you? Why do you want to do this craziness like run for mayor?
All right. Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it was here where you remember, Blackburn hosted one of my first kickoff fundraisers when I ran for city council before we had Black's Bar right here.
That's right.
That's right. And we had to talk about John Lee Hooker and how I love Mississippi Delta blues. Mm-hmm. I moved here from Alabama. It's part of my story. So, John Lee Hooker, one shot, one bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? Boom, 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 boom. I grew up listening to B.B. King and John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters and all of those folks.
What year was that, man?
So I ran for office the first time in 2014.
Oh, that's right.
Right. After doing 4 years as Steve Mills' chief of staff. Mm-hmm. And I was the youngest council member in the city's history at the time, but I had an old soul. Right? I listened to the blues and I hung out with older guys like me, like Aaron Blackburn.
Older guys. Oh, thanks, man.
Hey, it's all good, brother. You're looking good. You're looking good. Older than me.
You're right.
Right. And but just to tell you a little bit about myself, and this is the Bixby Knolls community crowd, so I'm an uptowner, so we're neighbors, right? I come to First Fridays in Bixby Knolls just like everybody else, right? But my roots are actually all around the country. I was born on Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. My father was in the Air Force. My mother was a welder at General Motors in Wentzville, Missouri. But her roots were in Alabama, in the South. She actually integrated her school. She was selected to be one of 5 African-American students to integrate her school when she was 7 years old, the same age as my oldest daughter right now. Oh. And so we moved around a lot. I went to 14 different public schools across 5 states before coming to California. A few years after my parents divorced, we came to California on a Greyhound bus. It was my mom, my sister, who's a year older than me, and my little brother. And so we got here, it was, California, land of opportunity. We got here, had a 2-bedroom apartment. My sister and brother shared one room. My mom had the other room. I had the couch. I loved it. When I turned 15, having access to the front door, get access to your friends was great. So I had no problems sleeping on the couch. Right? The other thing I did when I was 15 was get a job. So my first job was at Jack in the Box. And my mom, when she got here, she worked at Arby's. And I can't eat Arby's to this day because we ate so much Arby's. Mama would bring Arby's back home from work.
Ooh, Arby's is terrible.
It's terrible. It is the worst. Hey, but we appreciated it. We appreciated it.
There's a comedian that says, whoever says, let's go to Arby's.
Right.
Whoever says that?
Not me.
I never said it.
Right. But, my mom always told us about hard work and determination, things she learned growing up in Alabama. And so that's what we did. She went to school to be a nurse while working. When I was my job, I worked at Jack in the Box, and my job was to pay the light bill. My sister paid the phone bill, and my mom paid the rent. And we all focused on getting into school. So my sister went to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and a year later, I got my college acceptance letter. Go Toros. Go Toros.
Right. Once a Toro, always a Toro.
Once a Toro, always a Toro. Right. People forget there's 2 Cal States for Long Beach. Right. I didn't get into Cal State in Long Beach.
No, I couldn't get in.
But I didn't get in. Right. It's okay. But but Cal State Dominguez Hills is where I went. I was an EOP kid. Right. Got there. Really wanted the full experience because it was all the things my mom told me about hard work and education. To me, it was like real. Right, when I got that college acceptance letter. So I became student body president on campus, joined a fraternity, got really involved. Met my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time. She actually didn't give me the time of day back then, right? But, we met, and I got an apartment in Bixby Knolls on Banner Circle. Everybody knows where that is.
I do.
$900 for one-bedroom apartment.
Yes.
Cannot find that today. That same apartment's like $2,000 now, right? Can't find it today. But I love the Uptown community. When I was 25, I bought my first home right here in Uptown. And it was by Coolidge Park, the Coolidge Triangle neighborhood. It was a great opportunity to buy a home at 25, but I'll tell you, that part of Uptown, we were missing some very basic things. So what I noticed was the homes were really nice. The corridors lacked investment. So we didn't have things like, we were the only district in the city that didn't have a library. There was a North Long Beach library in the other district, right? But we didn't have a library in our district. We didn't have a bank in our district, right? We didn't have a Starbucks. There was a Starbucks literally in every community of Long Beach, not in the 9th district when we started there,
Really?
right? But, there were other services really important that we didn't have. Like, we didn't have a paramedic. So 3 minutes slower was our response times in North Long Beach. It took 3 minutes longer to actually get to respond to our communities. And so that's what really inspired me to get involved, right? So I got an opportunity to serve as chief of staff to Councilman Steve Neal. I never worked in local government before, but he said, "Hey Rex, you've got, you're smart, you're an organizer. That's what we need for this community. And so come in, help us sort of, create a new vision for North Long Beach." And that's what we did. 4 years later, I ran for city council. And we took on those challenges. And I became the youngest council member in the city's history. We built the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library, the largest, most modern branch library in the whole city. We restored Paramedic Rescue 12, so our response times, we cut them by 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. The Forest Park used to be a really shady place. Mm-hmm. Now we've got ducks and turtles because we did 40 acres of
so the ducks are floating.
The ducks, right? We got ducks and turtles, right? A whole different situation now, right? The forest wetlands, and if you go there today, you'll see the Environmental Stewardship Center. The only one in the city is being built in North Long Beach, right at the Forest Park, right? We invested in community centers and clubhouses, and we built a citywide shelter, and so if you go there now, you have the Doris Topsy Elver Community Center. Just this morning, we opened the Ronald Arias Health Equity Center. We've got, we opened 13 restaurants and a bank. So North Long Beach has some pep in its step when we think about where we are today. And so you asked me, why am I taking this crazy step?
Why are you doing this crazy
right.
step?
So, look, I feel like there's, North Long Beach was filled with families that are just like mine, people that, want to do good and have economic opportunity, but maybe some of those things, those opportunities weren't presented to them, right? But I know it's possible when people work together because we did it in North Long Beach. And so the pandemic just sort of put us in a place where a lot of people are still hurting. Mm-hmm. If you're making good money, if your family's making over $80,000 a year, then guess what? You bounce back pretty good. Black's doing fine. I'm doing fine. You're doing okay, right? But we know that it was a K-shaped recovery. So that bottom leg of the K, those are people who are a little housing unstable, housing insecure, right? Multiple families living in one household, right? Slipping into homelessness, issues like that. And I want to bring that same spirit of collaboration that helped us in North Long Beach, helped us build a coalition to become vice mayor, elected by my peers twice, to the whole city. Because what's going to take to get through this recovery and take on the challenges, homelessness, keeping our communities safe, making sure our economy is strong, it's going to take unity and collaboration. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I'm stepping up from vice mayor to run for mayor of Long Beach. I think Robert is going to go to Congress and bring home the bacon. That's what he's good at, delivering. Well, we're going to need that. We're going to need that for this recovery. But we're also going to need a city council that can work together. We're going to need to tackle homelessness. We're going to need our county board of supervisors to be right there with us. I'm proud that Supervisor Janice Hahn and Holly Mitchell and Hilda Solis, a majority of them, are supporting me. So we have a team that's ready on day one to make sure that we are prepared to tackle the issues of Long Beach. And so out of duty, I have a responsibility to step up for our city and make sure as we recover, no community is left behind.
Yeah. As you talked about homelessness, and that seems to be one of the main concerns that you hear when you talk to people. And I was driving over to Blacks here, a quarter mile away, and there's somebody sleeping in the middle of the street. Kids are walking home from school.
Sleeping at the church.
Next to the church.
Yeah.
And the kids are, walking by this person sleeping.
Yeah.
And, there's the mental health aspect, there's the drug addiction aspect, and then there's the folks that have just lost hope,
Right.
that they just don't have a way to go. So those folks, I think,
Yeah.
how are we going to reach those folks? The other folks that are mentally ill or drug addiction, there's services we have to start providing them and getting them into those treatments.
Yeah.
So for the folks that are down and out, how can we get those? I think that's a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Me personally.
Yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking what we all see on the streets. You know, and I know, and unfortunately I know what it's like. So when we moved around a lot, you know, again, 14 public schools across 5 states. And I remember when I was a kid, we were raised to be people of faith. And so I pray at night before I go to sleep. But when I was 7, the things I prayed for, when we were in that period of moving around 7 to 9, you know, I would pray to have the same friends in school next year as I had this year, right? That's what a kid would pray for. But as an adult, when I look back, what I was asking for was housing stability. I was praying to be in the same place and anchor and set roots. And right now in our city, too many families are living one paycheck away from being on the street. So when we talk about the homelessness issue, let's just dissect it a little bit. Our homeless count shows us consistently, the last few years, about 50% of the people who are living on the street is directly connected to economic issues. Either, you know, I lost my job, or I work, but I don't make enough to keep up with inflation and rent, or I lost my home. And a lot of them are actually working, the working poor. And you can't address that without really talking about poverty in our city. Like, cities have to step up and have strategies to address poverty. That's housing that's affordable, wages that can get people and to actually live in the communities that they work. Now, the other half, it's significantly more challenging, because the other half, you're dealing with domestic abuse, you're dealing with behavioral health and mental health, you're dealing with substance abuse. Now, in Long Beach, we're fortunate that we have our own health department. We're one of 3 cities in the whole state, and it's incredible. We're able to do a lot. But there are some limitations to what we can do. If we want to address things like step-down recuperative care facilities, let's say someone off the street goes into a hospital because they cut their arm. Once their arm has been stitched up, they're still not ready to go back on the street, so they take up a hospital bed for maybe 2 weeks. But what we should have are things like recuperative care that gets you out of that hospital bed into a place to sleep for 2 weeks and sleep it off. And maybe you're willing to accept services instead of going right back to the street and end up right back in the emergency room the very next day or very next week. And so we don't have the capacity to deal with that, because mental health is a function of the county, not a function of the city like our public health department. So what do we need to do? We have to localize mental health support. If you look at the cities of Claremont, Pomona, Laverne, Berkeley, they're smaller cities, but guess what? They have their own local mental health bureaus. They get funded directly from the state and federal government to provide mental health outreach in their communities. They don't have to go through the county. For all intents and purposes, they are their own county, just like we have our own health department. Now, yes, there are smaller jurisdictions, but we can learn from that, right? We don't have to always model the big cities. Sometimes we can learn from the small ones to get it right. So in Long Beach, last year in October, I convened a roundtable with the hospitals, with our mental health providers, Cal State Long Beach, to talk about localizing mental health. What would it look like if Long Beach were to take some of these things away, like direct service, or how we fund recuperative care and substance abuse, and bring it in our own health department so we can fund it locally? We're not talking about creating new bureaucracy out of our tax money. We're talking about actually getting it directly to the city who's on the ground, right? Sort of bypassing the county. And this idea is not crazy. It will take a vote of the LA County Board of Supervisors. I already mentioned, three out of 5 supervisors have already endorsed me. This is possible, right? And it will take legislation from the state. Yeah. Well, the Speaker, Anthony Rendon, he represented North Long Beach, and he's endorsed me for Assembly. All right, Lena Gonzalez, our state senator, is my campaign chair. These things are possible, and we're in the best position possible to do this. So if we localize mental health, that's new resources that we can bring into Long Beach to do direct service and address these issues from upstream standpoint, like prevent the root causes of homelessness. Here's another thing. I'm afraid of what the homeless count is going to tell us. We just did the homeless count last month. And, what I'm afraid of is that we've done a good job taking people off the street, but more people have come onto the street at a faster rate than how we can take them off. Right? So a part of this is we have to keep as many people in their homes as possible. We have to build housing that is affordable. Now, we used to do that at a more significant rate in Long Beach. When we had redevelopment, 20% of every dollar of redevelopment in the state of California had to go to affordable housing. So in Long Beach, that was $25 to $30 million a year that we put into affordable housing, production or preservation. Now that ended in the FY 2013 budget, the California budget, right? It was a governor's action. And when that ended, we saw 5 years later that we found a housing homelessness crisis in California. Now it typically takes 4 to 5 years to build a unit of housing. 4 to 5 years when you add it up. Site acquisition, entitlements. You guys had a business, you know entitlements. They take some time, right?
I'll talk to you about that.
Right? We gotta talk about that.
Don't remind us.
Right.
Don't rub it.
Right. So from finding the land to entitlements to construction, 18 months of construction on a development like that. Then you have the lease up period. You add all that up, it's around 4 years to get a project up and going. 5 years after they eliminate redevelopment, we found ourselves in a crisis. So part of this is man-made. Without a local source of revenue to produce housing and control it, doesn't have to be a whole bunch of money. Like, we just have to continue paying into it. And we don't have to do it alone. We can partner with the school districts. We can partner with college districts. Our Long Beach College Promise, right? That's the model. It's telling kids you can go to Cal State Long Beach or you can go to Long Beach City College. But imagine if we expanded on it and had a Long Beach Housing Promise, housing and education promise. That said, every kid that's on free and reduced lunch in our city, their families get access to the affordable housing that's being produced in our city. If we're able to think like that comprehensively, about the whole ecosystem, then perhaps you'll see other things begin to happen, like less housing insecurity that leads to lower graduation rates. Because the most significant driver of low graduation rates is housing instability. So if you're targeting, the families who are going to our public schools, and making sure they get access to your housing, you create a more stable environment. So the thing about homelessness, we can't just think about let's sweep people into the seam, sweep them into the river, we don't see them anymore, out of sight, out of mind. The problem just gets worse. We have to address it, but we also have to always keep our eyes on the upstream prevention.
Yeah, it becomes a game of whack-a-mole. Remember as a kid?
Yeah,
you hit it,
I do.
Here, so another city has a different policy, and they whack the mole, and it comes over here, and they whack it. So the people end up being, like you said, disenfranchised.
Right.
There's a lot of students in
Absolutely.
Long Beach City College.
City College. You know what I'm talking about.
In the parking structure.
Right.
And they allowed it for a little while. I guess it was some kind of
safe
program.
parking.
Safe parking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's change topics a little. Let's talk about
So I was just getting started.
No, I know.
All
You sound like a preacher. What else?
Let's talk about the Queen Mary.
Yeah. What's up with the Queen?
What's going on?
Well, Queen Mary ain't coming to Bixby Knolls. How you gonna bring it up the river?
It'd probably be cheaper.
That's a good one. So what do you? So just the circumstance.
What do we? Yeah, I mean, we have this. I guess it's an icon of the city. It's going to cost whatever, 100 million, 200, 500 million, whatever they're throwing out these days to get it to be viable and not sink.
Right.
Do you have a vision for it? Do we want to make it a historic?
The next mayor better have a vision.
Yeah, what are we doing there?
You gotta run it for the right office if you don't.
We just
right now the Queen is ugly. How are we gonna make the Queen beautiful?
The Queen is beautiful.
It is
Right.
right.
It's timeless.
I tell you what, the inside, that Art Deco stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, but we got a problem.
We do.
The Queen got some issues going on.
Yeah. So here's the way I look at it. So you both own homes. You don't take care of that homes. What happens?
Yeah.
It deteriorates, right?
Right.
Imagine your grandfather built a nice home, and it was passed on to your parents who did not take care of that home.
Yeah.
Now, when it's your turn and it comes on to you, do you burn the house down? You got to fix the home.
You got to.
And leave it in the hands of the next generation better than you found it.
All right.
The Queen Mary is an asset to the city. It is not a burden. We have to treat it like a business, and we have to treat it like an asset, which means we need to secure it, we need to invest in it, and we need to make it economically viable and thriving. It means we may have to make some changes. It may mean, take it, make the investment to take it out of salt water because it's no longer a boat.
Yeah.
It's no longer a boat, it's a monument.
Yeah.
Right? Take steps to remove it out of the salt water, make sure that we're putting it in something that you know,
sit in,
right?
yeah.
Fresh water,
Right.
whatever, right? Dry mounted, whatever. We got to figure that out.
A big frame around it so it doesn't sink. Or
Right? But what's most important is continuous economic viability. As a hotel, and by reconfiguring where it is, you can create more waterfront space to leverage for economic opportunity. Imagine, like, the cruise lines are an economic driver in our city.
Yes.
They always have been.
Yeah.
But have you seen modern cruise terminals? They're incredible. They're beautiful. They're theme parks, hotels, all of these things. Imagine if we were to save the Queen and we treat it like an investment, like an asset, like a home, and we invest in it. But by doing so, we're able to create more opportunity to leverage and perhaps attract more cruises to Long Beach. Something that we already know works.
almost like the same thing they did at Ports of Call.
Okay.
You know, where they kind of revamped everything.
Oh,
to
they
get,
did. They did, yeah.
more business.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of
Absolutely.
adventure to do that.
Now, there's something to be said about the fiscal realities too. So, you know, we have to make sure that we're being smart. The people that we work with are, you know, peer reviewed. That there's a lot of transparency in the process, and that, you know, it generates the revenue to sustain itself. And so that means we're going to have to bring in world-class partners and consultants to make sure that this is done right and out in the open and transparent. And so this is going to be a big challenge, but I think that we can be in a really strong position and create a new economic driver in our city that's going to help provide basic services for everybody. Your police officers, your firefighters, because we're generating millions more dollars because we made smart decisions with our asset. And so, again, I look at this, the Queen Mary, as an asset that needs to be managed better, and we need to invest in it just like you would invest in a home.
Right.
Yeah. Crime. 9th District. I used to live there.
Good.
My heart is in the 9th. My first home was in the 9th. Me being who I am, you know I know about crime. Your thoughts on the crime that's going on here in Long Beach?
Listen, I'll tell you, it may be new to some, but it's not new to me.
I know.
Right? I mean, look, here's what I can tell you. It's always heartbreaking to get a phone call from the watch commander or from the commander when you hear somebody lost their life. And unfortunately, I've gotten that phone call a lot of times. And a council member, your job, like, you need to respond. You need to make sure you're talking to the family and that the community understands what's happening, because every time that happens, there's trauma that happens in the community. But what I'll tell you is, you know, I don't want to have to make that call. If there are things we can do to keep us from actually having to make that call, I would sleep better at night. I'll give you some examples. I'll give you a few examples. My first year in office, there were 3 incidents where 3 young men were killed. One was a stabbing, 2 were shootings, and it was all unrelated, but in the same week. And something stood out to me. It was, you know, they were all around 19 to 22 young men. And it happened around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, each one. And so I remember, because I was like 31 at the time. And I was like, I'm not that far different in age from them at that moment. What was I doing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I was 19 or when I was 22? Personally, I got into college through EOP. I was on a college campus. And I wonder, and I remember my mindset, nobody wants to be a loser or no one wants to die. These young men didn't want that for their lives. If they had the opportunities given to me, I wonder if they would have been alive and doing something different. So that informs the decisions I make as an elected official. When I think about safety, sure, absolutely. We got to invest in staffing and response times and all of those things. But we have to be concerned about prevention, violence prevention, and investing in community safety. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of that. There's one motel in Long Beach that has 1,100 calls for service in 1 year. 1,100 calls for service
On Atlantic Street?
in 1 year. I'm not going to call them out. In 1 year. It was about 4 times higher than the next highest in the city. Do you know how much money it takes to respond 1,100 times?
Yeah.
If you're a police officer, do we want our police officers continuing to go to these same places or responding to our residents?
They would get frustrated and they would look at it like, what's the point? Because it's going to happen again.
Right. Now, what if the city bought that motel And now you've just reduced your demand 1,100 calls by buying that motel and turn it into something that's actually a benefit to the community, like maybe housing. I can tell you right now, because I've been a council member in North Long Beach, land use is directly related to crime. If we were to look at nuisance liquor stores, nuisance motels, I can tell you where we're spending our resources in vice, on human trafficking investigations and stings. The human trafficking are in those hotels. If we know where they are, we should be talking about a land use response to taking out the hotels or bringing them into compliance so they're not non-conforming hotels, so they're economically thriving.
It's what Los Angeles has. It's called an abatement unit.
Right, an abatement unit.
The city
right.
comes in, the city attorney, if the owner's involved,
right,
they take it.
They can take it.
They can take it.
Exactly. So that, to me, that's being smarter about our resources.
Yeah.
So our public servants and our public safety can actually serve the public instead of addressing things that pull the community down. Now, there's a lot of this happening all across the city. Yeah, I can tell you, if we were to address these issues in a lot of chronic areas, and it's not just North Long Beach, you're talking East Long Beach, north of downtown, the west side, Central Long Beach.
Yeah.
If you address those nuisances, it's going to make a safer community. You're talking about nuisance liquor stores, nuisance motels, places that if you put a heat map on where shootings are, you see exactly what's driving it. The other part of this, so yeah, again, we can talk about staffing, that's one part, but we got to talk about community safety. Now, here's an analogy I'm going to use. Because we're at the bar, and I'm going to tell a story.
Always at the bar.
We're at the bar. Anybody here like gardening?
Yes, I do.
A little gardening? I told you, my mom's from Alabama. I lived down there a little bit, and we all had to learn. Imagine that you planted a garden, and you put in that garden every fruit you wanted it to bear. And when you were done with that garden, you turned off the faucet. For a day, a week, a month, a year, 40 years you turned off the faucet, right? And now Blackburn comes in. He's the new gardener. He comes in to this garden, turns on the faucet 40 years later. No fruit comes out. That's because it's not a garden anymore. The next guy comes in, because Blackburn says, I'm not putting anything else into this garden. I'm leaving. Next guy comes in, turns on the faucet. Something's wrong with this garden. I'm not putting any more of my water in this garden. Leave. Next guy comes in and says, this is not a garden. What we have to do is rebuild this garden. We're going to have to take out the weeds. What are the weeds? Your check cashing places, your liquor stores, your nuisance motels, the things that are starving the nutrients out of the soil, that are robbing the community. And then what do you do next? You got to reinvest in the soil and replant those seeds. So what are planting seeds? Building the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library, the Ron Artist Community Health Center, the Environmental Stewardship Center, Parks and Open Space, homeless shelters, the things the community needs that will actually help. Banks, coffee shops, right? You plant that in that garden. And then you turn on the faucet. What is the faucet? That's making it economically viable. Making sure the people have housing, making sure the small businesses are thriving, make it economically viable. And then that garden bears fruit. So the work we have to do in Long Beach to make it a safer community is we have to replant the garden in all the areas where it has been starved of water and stolen of nutrients for 40 years. Now people say, oh, that's a 40-year plan. No, we just did a lot of that in North Long Beach in 7 years. It's possible across the whole city.
I sat on the board. I saw the growth.
And there's opportunities, right?
Yeah. Artesian.
Right, there's plenty of opportunities. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's how we have to look at it. It's called asset-based framing. We have to look at our community as assets, just the same way we looked at the Queen Mary. It's an asset. We have to look at North Long Beach like an asset. We got to look at the West Side, Bixby Knolls as an asset. What Blair has done on Atlantic has shown what's possible all over the place. So if it's an asset, think from a standpoint of providing services. Imagine if we were generating sales tax in every part of town and property taxes in every part of town. There'll be more police officers, firefighters, parks, open space, all of those things to go around. So when we talk about like investment and equity, we're not talking about stealing from one and giving to another. That is false. What we're talking about is creating a common covenant, a standard in every part of our city that we all work toward, because ultimately we all win, right? That's the concept here. If you do that, then you have a safer, healthier community. because we can't play the game of just suppression, whack-a-mole.
Right.
Can't play whack-a-mole every time, right? Sure, somebody commits a crime, you need to have a penalty. Somebody does something to you, they take your property and all those things, justice needs to happen, absolutely. But we also have to think bigger. The job of the mayor is not to be the council member for 9 districts. You all have council members. I'm not running for re-election. I've done it long enough, right? It's not to be a council member for every district. The role of the mayor is to set a vision for the city and build consensus around that vision and get your colleagues and your community to come along with you. That's the job of the mayor. So, you know, and that's why I think I'm uniquely qualified. The majority of the Long Beach City Council, majority of the Long Beach School Board, and the majority of the Long Beach College Board, all the agencies that we need to partner with, and the county, all the people we need to partner with to rebuild our garden have endorsed me for mayor. And that's what we plan to do when we win.
Good, very good. Thanks for talking to us on this whole
Sure.
thing. We do have some questions that are kind of fun.
Okay.
You don't know what, you know.
Well, I got one for him.
He's got one. Okay, so which one do you want to ask for?
Him and I got one together.
Okay.
Did you see what's that Boardwalk Empire?
Loved it.
Okay.
Loved
The
it.
Wire or Boardwalk Empire?
The Wire all day. The Wire
Told
all
you.
day. Come on.
Told y'all.
The Wire
I told
every
him.
day.
I told him.
But they both had Omar and
That's what I'm talking about.
So
What you call him? Omar, right?
Omar.
Yeah.
Omar first.
Okay, you got me on
Right.
that.
Omar first.
So
Go ahead, ask
it's
yours.
my generational thing.
But Boardwalk Empire was incredible.
Yeah,
I
great,
loved it.
great acting,
Incredible.
great. Star Trek or Star Wars?
See, Star Wars has changed so much. Star Wars has changed so much. So Star Wars has. I'm gonna give a little double speak on this, right? I love Star Trek because I watched it with my stepdad and with my family as a kid, right? It's nostalgic for me. I can't watch it as much as a grown up as I could as a kid, though. Star Trek, Star Wars, I can get with, but not this last trilogy.
No, I can't either.
I can't get with that.
No, I can't.
I can't get with this last trilogy. The Mandalorian? Off the hook. The Mandalorian.
That was good.
Right. And I'm looking forward to Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Like, and I love it because my daughters can watch it too, right? They're 4 and 7. They know Baby Yoda, right? Like they know that. Right? They can't watch everything with me. They're not into like the Marvel stuff, but they're into Star Wars.
Everybody loves Baby Yoda.
Everybody.
Right.
And one last fun question: your favorite '80s band?
You were born in '80, man.
I'm 1 and 3. Band.
Okay.
No, it's okay. I mean, I can do it. Band. Tribe Called Quest. That's 90s. That's 90s. That's 90s. Wait, hold on. I'll go back because you're right. I was born in the 80s. I don't want to front.
We're aging ourselves.
I don't want to front. But
90s.
I'm gonna give you one.
Favorite '90s band. You grew up in the '90s.
I did. I'm really trying to resolve this '80s situation.
Okay, go ahead, resolve.
Well, I'm gonna stick with my first answer. I'm gonna say Tribe Called Quest.
Yes.
And I know they were on the cusp, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Tribe Called Quest.
Got it.
And my supporters, it's a Tribe Called Rex. Tribe Called Rex.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for talking to us.
One more last parting words to the camera.
Parting words to the camera.
Yeah, sure.
Sage wisdom.
Sure. Well, we're hanging out at Black's Bar. It's not my first time here because, Blackburn is a friend and mentor. But what I'll tell you is that I love this city. I've been honored to dedicate every day of my life, for the last 8 years to making this city, 12 years actually, because I was Steve Mills chief of staff, to make this community a better place. And we've had some success, but our challenges are great. But I know that we can overcome those challenges. I know it because we've done it. And the recipe is simple. By working together. By working together, Long Beach can overcome anything. I've seen it, and that's what we're going to do. And so I look forward to meeting you. If you want to catch up with me or find me, go to joinrexrichardson.com or find me at Rex Richardson on Twitter or Instagram. And I would love to meet you and host the meet and greet. So again, I'm Rex Richardson. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you. And one last question before we really part.
Did you turn it off? No.
Oh, it's on. Okay. What's in the red cup?
What's in water?
It's always water.
It's always
water.
water. All right.
Later.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.